Wolverine. The claws were never the experiment. The claws were always his. Logan's mutation activated in childhood, bone claws pushing through the skin of his knuckles, raw, painful, and completely uncontrollable. And here's the part most people still get wrong. Weapon X didn't give Wolverine his claws. He already had them. The mutation also gave him a healing factor. Accelerated regeneration powerful enough to survive wounds that should kill almost anyone. Then Weapon X found him. They coated what was already there in the most indestructible metal on Earth, adamantium. Bonded to every bone in his skeleton simultaneously. The process should have killed him. His healing factor kept him alive. The result? Unbreakable bones, unbreakable claws, and a body the program assumed they now owned. They were wrong about that too. But here's the part that hits different when you really think about it. For over a century, Logan believed his claws were adamantium, that the program made him what he was. They didn't. The metal was a coating. The weapon was always him. Weapon X didn't create Wolverine. They just made him harder to kill and handed his greatest enemy a remote control in the process. Every molecule of metal in his body now answered to Magneto, and Magneto knew it before Logan did. Speaking of Magneto, his origin makes Wolverine's look straightforward. Magneto. Eric Lensher's mutation didn't activate in a lab. It activated in a death camp. Auschwitz, 1944. A boy being separated from his parents at the gates. Guards forcing the family apart. The distance growing, and something inside him tearing open in response. The metal gates bent. The fences moved. Not because he understood what he was doing, because his mind refused to accept what was happening, and his mutation answered with the only language it had. The guards stopped it. His parents were taken anyway. The activation lasted seconds. The wound it came from lasted a lifetime. Every X-Men origin involves some kind of pain. That's the whole point of the mutant metaphor. But Magneto's is different because the mutation and the trauma are completely inseparable. He didn't discover his powers, he survived into them. And every choice he makes as a villain, every war started, every fortress built, every act of preemptive violence runs a direct line back to that gate. He became the most powerful mutant alive, and he spent every volt of it making sure no one could ever take something from him again. Charles Xavier was his closest friend. They built something together once, and still couldn't agree on whether humanity deserved saving. That disagreement starts with a boy at a gate, watching metal move too late to matter. Jean Grey. Okay, so here's something most casual fans don't know. Jean Grey's first mutation wasn't telekinesis. It was telepathy. And it was so dangerous that Professor Xavier suppressed it before she turned 10. When her childhood friend Annie was struck by a car, Jean didn't just watch it happen. She felt it, psychically bonded to Annie in the moment of impact, experiencing the death from the inside, consciousness fragmenting in real time. She was 9 years old, and she couldn't shut it off. Every mind around her flooding in simultaneously. Every thought, every emotion, every death in proximity. All of it arriving with no filter into a child's brain. So Xavier did something that sounds helpful and gets more complicated the longer you think about it. He built psychic walls around Jean's telepathy, suppressed it completely, and taught her to use her telekinesis instead. Jean Grey spent years believing she was a telekinetic with some limited psychic ability. The truth was the reverse. She was one of the most powerful telepaths ever born, raised to use her secondary power first because the primary one was too dangerous to touch. And underneath both of those, underneath the telepathy and the telekinesis, something else had been waiting since the beginning. The Phoenix Force doesn't just choose anyone. It recognized what was already there. A cosmic entity that feeds on psionic potential found a woman whose real power had been locked in a box since childhood. And when those two things combined, that's not an upgrade. That's a detonation. Professor X. Imagine being 9 years old and suddenly hearing every adult in your life thinking things they never wanted you to know. Not suspecting, not guessing, hearing. Your mother's private fears, your father's resentments, your stepbrother's real feelings about you. All of it pouring in, unfiltered, whether you wanted it or not. That's the childhood Charles Xavier actually had. His telepathy didn't arrive gradually. It arrived all at once. And the world it showed him wasn't the world the adults around him pretended to live in. He saw behind every smile, every reassurance, every lie people tell children to protect them from the truth. He was 6 years old and already knew things no child should know. Not because he went looking for them, because he couldn't close his ears. Over years, Xavier learned control, the ability to block thoughts, sort voices, and finally choose silence. He became the most powerful telepath alive by learning to build walls, first in his own mind, then in everyone else's. The man who founded a school for mutants built it around the same isolation he'd spent his entire childhood learning to survive. He understood what uncontrolled power did to a child. He understood it because he was never not that child. And if you ever wonder why Xavier's methods can feel too controlling, why he builds psychic blocks without always asking permission, remember, the first mind he ever had to manage was his own. Storm. Before Professor Xavier found Ororo Monroe, an entire village worshipped her. Her mutation gave her control over weather, wind, rain, lightning, atmospheric pressure across a wide range, all of it responsive to her emotional state. Orphaned young and surviving as a thief in Cairo, Storm's mutation changed everything. In the Serengeti, she used her abilities to bring rain to land that hadn't seen water in years. The people who benefited didn't call her a mutant. They built ceremonies around her. They prayed to her. She was worshipped for years before anyone told her what she actually was. Xavier found her and offered something the village couldn't. An explanation, a category. People like her. She left godhood for a school in Westchester. Most mutants spend their early years hiding what they are. Aurora Monroe spent hers being venerated for it. She didn't arrive at the X-Men as someone learning to accept herself. She arrived as someone who already knew her value and chose to apply it differently. She didn't need Xavier to tell her she was powerful. She needed him to give her somewhere to aim it. The lightning was never the story. The woman calling it down was. Cyclops? Cyclops sounds cool until you think about what his power actually means. Scott Summers cannot open his eyes without destroying whatever he's looking at. The optic blasts, concentrated force beams that can punch through steel, are not something he activates. They are his default state. His eyes open. The blast fires. The ruby quartz visor is not a cool accessory. It is the only thing standing between Scott Summers and permanent destruction of everything in his field of vision. His mutation activated after a head injury. The part of his brain that regulated his optic output simply stopped working. He woke up unable to look at anything safely, unable to make eye contact with anyone. Most mutants fear losing their powers. Scott Summers has never once been able to put his down. So what did he do with that? He trained himself into one of the most precise tactical minds the X-Men have ever had. Because precision was the only way to function when the alternative was collateral damage every time he blinked. The visor became his identity. The discipline became his personality. And the man who has never once seen the world without a filter became the person the X-Men look to when everything else failed. He sees everything through red. He always has. He chose to protect people with it anyway. The films absolutely wasted him, by the way. The comics version of Scott Summers is a completely different character. But that's a video for another day. Mystique. Here's a question nobody can answer. What does Mystique actually look like? Not the blue skin and yellow eyes. That's her natural resting state. But her original face before the mutation? Nobody knows, including her. Raven Darkholm's mutation activated in childhood, and she has been changing her appearance so consistently for so long that the original version of herself is effectively gone. Her shape-shifting isn't cosmetic. She can replicate bone structure, skin texture, voice patterns, retinal patterns, fingerprints. She doesn't just look like someone else. She passes every physical test designed to tell people apart. She doesn't just change her face. She becomes whoever the situation requires, completely, down to the biology. Mystique's age in the comics is genuinely unclear. She may have been alive for over a century, suggesting her mutation may slow aging too. She's been a villain, an X-Man, a double agent for both simultaneously. She raised Rogue. She worked with Magneto. She has outlived more identities than most people have acquaintances. What makes Mystique's origin compelling isn't what the mutation gave her, it's what it cost her. A person who can be anyone eventually stops knowing who they actually are. And for a character whose entire power is built on identity, that's not just a philosophical problem. It's the weapon her enemies use against her. Iceman. Bobby Drake spent years being underestimated. By his teammates, by his enemies, and most of all by himself. His mutation showed up early. Ice generation, temperature control, frozen constructs, useful in a fight, reliable support. He treated himself as background, not the most important person in the room. He was wrong, and nobody told him. The first crack appeared when Mikhail Rasputin forced Bobby's body into its true form, revealing he could convert his entire physical body into organic ice, not coat himself in a frozen layer, become it completely. Bobby could dissolve into water vapor, disperse through the atmosphere, and reconstruct himself from ambient moisture after complete physical destruction. You cannot kill Bobby Drake. You can only scatter him. He reforms from the air around you. Later, alongside other Omega-level mutants, Iceman helped terraform an entire planet, reshaping its environment at a scale that required redefining what his power category even meant. The Bobby Drake origin is the best reframe in X-Men history. The most powerful mutant in the room spent decades thinking he was the least important one. The films never showed this, not even close. The MCU has a completely open lane to do this right for the first time. And if they do, it'll be one of the best moments in the franchise. Emma Frost. Emma Frost didn't ask for her second mutation. It activated because 16 million people died around her. She was already one of the most powerful telepaths alive, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, a woman who could crack any mind in any room and walk out with everything it held. Then Cassandra Nova deployed a wild sentinel against Genosha. 16 million mutants on the island. The sentinel finished the job in minutes. Emma should have been among them. Instead, she was found standing in the rubble, encased in a shell of organic diamond. Her body had converted at the cellular level into a near-indestructible crystalline material that blocked psychic attacks and withstood forces that would destroy conventional armor. She survived the worst thing that ever happened to mutant kind by becoming something she had never been before. And here's the catch. And it's a brutal one. She cannot use her telepathy in diamond form. The two mutations cancel each other out. Every single fight she has to choose. Be the psychic weapon that can level a mind from across a room, or be the indestructible shield that nothing can break through. Never both. Emma Frost built her entire identity on psychological dominance, and her survival mutation takes that away every time she uses it. That trade-off, psychic weapon or indestructible shield, never both, is the most brutal design in X-Men history. Because it means Emma's greatest power is also a permanent tax on everything that made her dangerous in the first place. Fan theory territory for a second, some readers think Cassandra Nova may have intentionally triggered Emma's diamond form. Comics never confirmed it. What the comics did confirm is this. Emma survived. 16 million others didn't, and the mutation that saved her costs her something every single time she uses it. Rogue. Rogue's mutation activated the first time she kissed someone. Cody Robbins. First kiss. Seconds of contact. He lost consciousness. She absorbed his memories, his physical strength, his life force, involuntarily, with no warning, no understanding, and no way to stop it. He recovered. She didn't. Not because she was physically harmed, because she now carried pieces of him inside her, his memories, his feelings, fragments of his personality, and she hadn't asked for any of it. The mutation that activated with a kiss turned every moment of human contact into something she couldn't risk. No control, no off switch, no exception for people she loved. She can't hold someone's hand, can't hug her own family, can't be touched without taking something from the person doing it. She joined the Brotherhood first, not because she was a villain, because Mystique found a girl with nowhere to go and offered her somewhere. She eventually came to Xavier, not looking for a team, desperate enough to walk through his door and ask if he could fix what she couldn't control. He couldn't fix it. He could only teach her to live with it. And here's what makes Rogue's origin the most powerful one on this list. Every other character on this list got a mutation that isolated them from the world in some way. Wolverine hid behind rage. Cyclops hid behind the visor. Mystique hid behind other people's faces. Rogue couldn't hide. Her isolation wasn't a choice or a strategy. Her own biology enforced it. Every single day, against every single person she ever cared about. She spent decades fighting to belong to a world that her mutation kept at permanent arm's length. And she kept showing up anyway. That's the origin. That's all 10. The X gene doesn't care about timing. It arrives. In the worst moment, the first moment, the moment that changes everything. And it does not ask permission. That's what makes the X-Men different from every other team in Marvel. The Avengers chose the job. The X-Men didn't, and they carried it anyway. Drop a comment, which origin hits hardest, and which one has never been done justice on screen. Like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell. We'll see you in the next one.